Hey, it's the podcast guy.
Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United of the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this. But the whistle goes down. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United, the National League, are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on Podcast, the Sutton Podcast in association with Lucky Star Gin. I'm still remembering to say that. Thank you very much, guys. I'm your host, Mike, and with me on our panel today, we've got Ali and Joe. Hello, guys. How are you?
Good evening. Very well.
So today, we're not going to be doing one of those...
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we got a little delay there with Joe. Right, I'll have to remember that. So we're not going to be peeking behind the amber curtain. It's more listening to your next door neighbours talking about you when you accidentally have the house in silence and a glass up against the wall. As always, please give us your engagement, join the discussion, stay connected, give us your thoughts in any of the social medias. You can find me at Sutton Podcast. So we're going to dive in. We're going to just introduce the panel. There may be a slight delay, but hello, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Good to be talking about the new season and in particular Sutton. Really looking forward to it.
Excellent. So I started following you fairly recently when you did a Transfer Targets article. We were just talking about it very, very briefly before we came on. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and make sure you put the plug in how people can find you and start following you. Don't forget the plug.
Yeah, well, I started the site in lockdown, where many good ideas came from. I support Torquay. Someone's got to. We cover the EFL and non-league. Off the Line blog on Twitter, and it should be on the first page now on Google. Go and check it out. We've just cover the lower leagues as best we can.
Excellent, lovely. And Ali, you guys mortified me by sharing one of the podcasts I did, but thankfully it was the one with Claire, who was brilliant, talking about the Paul Allen project, and I didn't actually have to speak much on that one, so that's not bad. But I guess probably a slightly bigger claim to fame will be the guy from the telly.
I mean, sometimes, not so much anymore. Yeah, I am also, like Joe, doing my best, along with a friend and colleague called George Ellick, to cover the EFL. I'm in awe of what Joe's able to do covering non-league as well. I love non-league football. I'm very interested in it and I try and follow it. But to do all of that and also provide insight and depth, I think is incredible. 3 leagues is enough for me. But yes, on the Not the Top 20 podcast, which has been going for over 7 years now, we do our best to provide the sort of depth of coverage I think that EFL fans are not treated to quite the extent as the Premier League fans, shall we say. So that's always been our mission statement from the very start. We don't always succeed, but we absolutely try our best. And yes, you're kind to mention a bit of television. It was my dream growing up to talk about football on TV, and I've been very lucky with a lot of opportunities over the last 5 years, in particular with Sky and with Quest when they had the EFL highlights. So not doing quite as much of that right now, but focusing on our own stuff, and that's equally rewarding.
Yeah, and another quick plug for you, because I noticed your Substack thing, there's offers on, so get that in quickly as well.
Yes, well, we thought that, the written content was something I grew up wanting to do. I wanted to be a writer before podcasting existed, and then podcasting came along and I realised that seemed a bit of me as well. And I think we just felt that although there's some incredible written content on various blogs and certainly loads of great stuff on Twitter at the moment, we wanted to use Substack, which is a new-ish platform, which essentially sends all the content direct to the subscriber's inbox. And as someone who spends a lot of my time researching the EFL, doing so at the moment means using a lot of different websites to try and find news or opinion or analysis, whatever you're after. So we're going to try our best, and we've built a decent little team now to provide minimum 3 pieces a week covering all of the leagues as best we can, and just try and give that breadth of written content delivered directly to the readers who will want to hopefully keep up to date with all things EFL.
Excellent. Okay, so today is just a bit of a quick chat just to know kind of how we're perceived from outsiders in inverted commas. And it's just your opinions. Don't worry, there's no pitchforks. You're miles away from me. I can't get to you. And a very quick apology, because once again the sun is setting on SN1, so there is going to be some horrible glare on YouTube from my nicely shaved head. First of all, we'll start with you, Joe, because you've got a bit more. I think a bit more sort of non-league background as well. So, what was your first knowledge of Sutton United, and what opinions did you ever have of us? We did have a quick chat beforehand, so I think I know what some of this will be. But
yeah, well, my first sort of real memory of Sutton is that promotion race when they went toe to toe with Torquay and managed to get over the line. Much to my disappointment. But I think that season gave us quite a good window into what Sutton are and what they've continued to be in the EFL. Quite well run, really good up and coming manager. And we talked before this about perhaps how Sutton are fishing in a slightly higher pool than I thought they would be. But they're still a club that has to perhaps be a little bit more pragmatic than others in the market. But most of all, I would see Sutton as a no-nonsense, hard-working side. And I think that comes from Matt Gray himself. So, really good run club, and we've seen that in the EFL.
yeah. And Ali, what was your first kind of knowledge of Sutton?
Well, I suppose outside of FA Cup exploits and outside of, I'm actually not a million miles away. So I'm based in Wandsworth. I grew up around this area, so I've never been far away geographically. A lot of my footballing life up to this point has been around Wimbledon, Kingstonian, Chelsea, that area. So I suppose I've had some, interesting discussions about Sutton United with my friends who support K's, and I suppose in the last few years, Wimbledon as well are, I guess, among your sort of local rivals, if you like. So, I'm someone that likes hearing other people's opinions, but likes also to form my own. So I was really excited when Sutton came up, not least because on a footballing level, it sounded incredible, from someone who hadn't followed much of the National League campaign to have had a team promoted that was not fully professional. I can't remember the last time that happened, certainly not in my memory covering the league. So clearly just on a sporting level, I was intrigued and excited. I'm someone that's much more interested in kind of footballing achievement rather than, let's say, what's happening with Wrexham and that sort of fanfare. So I came down pretty early on in the first season in League Two. I think it was a 1-0 win against Hartlepool, which was a great occasion for me to watch the two teams that had come up together. I try and see those teams as early as possible to get a look at. And then last season I came twice to the Harrogate game, which was a 2-1 win, and to the Grimsby game, which was, well, grim, really.
Skip.
A defeat in the rain. So I think I've enjoyed every trip that I've made so far. I've enjoyed covering the team and watching the team because I've seen a club and a team in a similar image. And I think, from an outsider's perspective, the thing that I like most about Sutton, from what I've gathered over the last 24 months or so, is it's a club that really knows itself, is very comfortable within its own skin. It's very, very clear from every Sutton fan that you speak to, who will talk to you with a lot of passion, with a lot of humour, some self-deprecation, but also a kind of a pride, I guess, and a completely justified pride at how the last few years have looked. And then I watch the team that plays as much as a football team can play like that, in that sort of image, hardworking in the image of its manager, Matt Gray. And Even from a tactics point of view, I've really enjoyed it because I like a variety of tactical styles in any division, and quite often teams are trying to, there's a lot of trends and teams try and do things kind of in a fairly uniform way. But even Sutton's 4-4-2 over the last 2 years has been, it's sometimes simple in an attacking sense, but always effective and always done very properly and well drilled, and really good out of possession as well. Make it really difficult for opposition teams to play at Sutton's best, of course, and we won't talk about what happened from mid-March onwards. But my I guess to sum up, my knowledge of Sutton really is fairly isolated in the last 2 years, but and I'm not just saying it because you've invited me on. It's been a fantastic addition to the EFL, and I guess therefore to my kind of life and work.
Yeah, I think you, in fairness, you did say something similar-ish when you on Quest, and certainly wasn't one of the people bashing Sutton for our tactics, inverted commas. What always made us laugh is everyone said we're just a long ball and that's all we've got, and it's like, okay, well, should be pretty easy to work out then, shouldn't it?
I find any discussion like that just sort of hilarious or tedious, because I really think it can be a lot of wasted time and energy. I truly believe that any football that results in goals being scored is entertaining and good to watch. So sure, when Sutton are not at their best and they're firing blanks like they did the last few months of last season, no one would say the tactics were particularly exciting, but at their best, they certainly have been. It's the same with a team like Swansea City in the Championship, who make 1,000 passes in every match. And when they don't score, that's very boring. And when they do score, it looks great. So those discussions are always quite funny, and I try not to get involved too much in that sort of stuff.
It will go on for years. So, Joe, just how do you perceive the sort of culture at Sutton United? I know Ali's touched on it a little bit.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, Google's joining in the conversation now. So how would you perceive the culture at Sutton United, like the players, manager, coaching board, fans? What's it seem to you as an outsider?
Yeah, well, I think certainly there's a real togetherness, a real, hard work, close-knit group. I mean, we saw that last year where, they did have spells of injuries, but, they were able to sort of solutionize, if you will, by playing players in different positions and all giving their all for the cause, as you will. I mean, we will probably come on to touch about one of them in Enzio Boldwine leaving. He was a key part of that. And yeah, I would just say they're a really hard-working group. And as Ali said, it's reflected in Matt Gray, who's taken to management like a duck to water.
He's brilliant. I'm not just saying it because I'm a Sutton fan, but every time I've spoken to him, people are bored of me saying this, but every time I've spoken to him, I kind of come off the call going, I want to give him 20 minutes or something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to run around. He just knows what to say. He'd be a good manager in any field, not just football. But yeah, he's got everyone hit from the same hymn sheet. He's bought into the club. He knows what the club's about. You've obviously mentioned the fans and everyone being on the same page, but in the same direction. We know we've got no money. We know one of the favourite songs is "We're Going Up with a Tenner in the Bank," because we can't spend our way out of it. I'm slightly different with the whole Wrexham thing. I know there's a lot of media about them, but the money they've got coming in is money they've kind of earned through other mediums that we couldn't perhaps tap into. It's not the dream like everyone says, but it is there. But we'll see. We'll see how the season pans out. But Ali, how does Sutton sort of compare to other clubs that you observe in that culture? Because we see a lot of infighting with some clubs, and it kind of throws us a little bit of like, what's going on over there?
Yeah, I think that is definitely true. I see a composure throughout the fan base, the manager, the team. I know less about the ownership of Sutton United than some other clubs, and I see that as a huge positive. The amount that we now know and in most cases dislike about a lot of the people that own and run football clubs in the EFL, in non-league, in the Premier League, it's a horrific part of what is all of our favorite thing in the world, and that's football, right? So the less that you know of or hear of an ownership or a group that run a football club or an individual, the better, in my opinion. And I think that helps with allowing a popular manager to set the agenda and to do what he does very well, as you've said yourself, is to manage. I get the feeling that he's never particularly carried away after a win, and I always think he's pretty fair in defeat, and he doesn't sugarcoat things. And I really think if you can have a manager like that, fans are, well, adult fans are adults. They're not kids. They're not stupid. But the way that your manager represents your club, so long as you like them, will impact the way that you talk about your team and the way that you handle victory and defeat. And so I definitely agree with you. There is a lot less composure within other clubs, within fan bases and those that run it. And it's something to be incredibly proud of because, as I say, there's, of course, the way that people talk about football is full of passion, and that can mean, roller coaster emotions and saying things in the heat of the moment. I would never want that to come out of the game, but it does make me despair sometimes how furious fans are all of the time about everything that's happening at their club. And we live in a football pyramid where it's pretty meritocratic. If your team is bad, they go down, and if they're good, they go up, and if they're in between, then they stay where they are. And I just think that we're very lucky to have the pyramid that we do. And quite often being relegated isn't the worst thing in the world. It can just be about finding a level that's better for the club to play at. So, yes, I think that composure that runs through the club is certainly something that really stands out. And, it has a big impact on, I think, the performance of the team as well. Because even in something like recruitment, you talk about not having much disposable, shall we say, and yet the recruitment is, to my eyes, very, very targeted and clear-minded. Matt Gray knows how he wants to play. He knows more or less what he wants from each player in each position, and I'm sure character and personality play a huge role as well. And you can see with the signings this summer that they've been made with clarity. Targets that have been able to get done early have been done early. They, to my eyes, all of them fit the system, and you nod your head. You think, yeah, Harry Smith makes complete sense playing for Sutton, much more than he would playing for, a few other teams in League Two. So I think having that continuity and clarity just helps maintain standards, basically, and reduce wasted money, wasted emotion, wasted energy, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned targets. Joe, I know you did a very detailed article based on what we all knew about Sutton. And we kind of, or I can't remember who said it, but one of the things I said is, I think he thinks we're shopping at a way lower level than we really are. So, I mean, did that surprise you? You mentioned Enzio leaving, which actually I felt was going to hurt us a bit more than some of the other names that left us, because Enzio was just absolutely awesome. You can go left back today, right back today, left wing, right wing. I tell you what, do a stint up front for us, Enzio. He'd play everywhere. But what do you think of the business so far for Sutton, Joe?
Yeah, I think the business has been good. I have to admit it's probably been at a higher level than I was probably expecting. Not to say that Matt Gray's not been a very good recruiter at Sutton. He has been. And, he has done that again this summer. But the quality of the players he's brought in has perhaps been better than I would have expected. You talked about Enzo Bolwine leaving there. I think whilst he may not have had the impact on the team as the likes of a Randall or a Bagil, I think he will be the biggest miss for Sutton, given his versatility. But yeah, I think the players that we brought in, we've already talked about Harry Smith. He was on my list of targets, the only one that sort of materialised, if you will. But as Ali said, a really good player. Spent last.
No, we got Steve Arnold.
Okay, two. I'll give myself more credit than that one. But Harry Smith, really good player. Played last season at Barnet, who are at the top of the National League. I would imagine they would have wanted him back, and his form for them probably would have interested a number of other teams. So for him to pick Sutton for the summer is a big coup for them. They've added some good experience. I mean, Craig Clay just comes off the back of winning League Two with Leighton Orient. To pick up someone like him in the middle of the park is a really, really good signing. And I'm sure Ali's a big fan of that one as well. To be able to land him on a free transfer as well represents really good business. I suppose the sort of the ones that I have the closest view on are the ones that they've recruited from non-league, Sawumni and Ngessem. Sawumni is so physical. He's actually really, really good on the ball as well. And he did really good. He was, I would have said, probably the best centre-back in the division in the National League last season. And brilliant for Bromley, even though he's so big last season. And then Christian Ngessen, even though he perhaps doesn't get the plaudits of the likes of Dominic Polian, he was so instrumental to the way Ebbsfleet play, sits at the base of midfield, keeps it tidy, keeps it moving. And I think that's a really, really good bit of business for them. I think the business they've done is good. As Ali said, it's very targeted. All the targets they want to bring in, they've probably got the majority of those.
Now, I know there's going to be a bit of business coming in the next sort of 7 days or so. But Ali, are you looking forward to nice, friendly, fair-playing midfield duo of Clay and Eastman? I'm sure every referee is delighted.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. I mean, my perception, which could be well off, was that Clay has been signed to share the Eastman minutes in the sort of ball winner, leader, anchor role, and that Ngessen, who I know much less about, I'm hoping is a little more mobile, a little more energetic, a little more willing and able to support attacks from deep, to provide a goal threat, ideally from open play like Smith, and essentially fill the very tall void left by Alistair Smith. So that was how I saw it. Eastman clearly is going to miss games through suspension, and as he gets older, albeit he seems to defy age somewhat, I do. Well, I suppose put it this way: if I saw a midfield of Eastman and Clay, I think I would know what I was getting, and that's a lot of leadership and a lot of ball winning, etc. But I think I would be a little concerned about how that would impact the passing of the team and the supporting of attacks, because Clay is a tackler. He is not someone that you should expect a huge passing range from, or a lot of particularly creative passing. And that's not necessarily a problem, because as we say, I think Gray is very good at accentuating the strengths of players and hopefully not exposing their weaknesses too much. So I see it as a good signing, but I'm looking forward to seeing Ngessen, and I guess I am hoping that he will be the sort of Smith replacement. I'm definitely excited about Josh Coley. I think that basically dribbling ability and a bit of X factor on the wings is, based on what I've seen in the last 2 years with Sutton, pretty crucial as the difference between Sutton being a team that's okay going forward, but not amazing and sometimes a bit one-dimensional, or a bit of a threat, right? So Ajiboye being the name that springs to mind from your first season back in the league, and then potentially at times last season when Neufville just couldn't get fit. He's that sort of player that I think when you play a fairly rigid 4-4-2, and when your fullbacks in the main don't spend a ton of time bombing on and overlapping and preferring to sit a little deeper, there is a lot of onus on the wide players to beat a man, basically, to break down opposition defences. And so I think we need Coley to be that guy, and probably one or two others through the door would be my sort of strongest take on the squad as it is right now. But I mean, genuinely, I don't know if you guys have discussed this yet, if you've spoken about Coley, but he played for Harrogate in the game that I came to, and he almost scored the best goal of the season. And I had to check yesterday on the YouTube highlights, and there it was. The ball got fizzed into him about 30 yards out. His first touch was with his back heel, which flicked it over the defender's head, and then he volleyed it first time off the bar. It was always, I genuinely couldn't believe what I'd seen at the time. Had to check it back, and that was Josh Coley. So based on that alone, I'm saying he's got a bit of X factor.
Well, yeah, I think that was one of the games. I think that's another game he was at in our title-winning season that he ran us ragged as well, and I think that's where he came to Matt's sort of attention and went, right, we're having him. Yeah, Matt has surprised us because we did kind of think that Clay coming in with questioning what's happening with Eastie, but I think Matt's actually played them in the friendlies together, which is odd. But I'm not going to start questioning him. He can do whatever he likes. So I know you get asked this question a lot. I've seen the posts, and I know the predictions are coming. So I'm quite happy if you swerve it with a kind of an area of the table. But where kind of do you think Sutton will be finishing this season?
Yeah, I think higher than last season, but probably not by much, or similar to last season. I think, and this can be difficult to explain, particularly before a ball has been kicked, but I expect League Two to feel stronger this season, partly because of the perceived strength or predicted strength of the teams coming up in Wrexham and Notts County, and equally some of the teams coming down. Last season, the 4 teams that came down from League One were horrific. I mean, Wimbledon 21st, Doncaster 18th, Gillingham 17th, and Crewe 13th. So 4 bottom half teams came down from League One, and that made it really quite a weak renewal of the division. So I guess I say that to say that even if Sutton maintained their standards broadly from the last 2 years, I still think it would be a tough ask to, let's say, punch their way into the top 7, which I guess would be the sort of dream and the target. But I certainly am. I would never be worried based on everything I've just banged on about composure and clarity and understanding yourself. I would never be particularly worried about extended runs of poor form, or I would never be worried about a lack of motivation. I would never be worried about this team under Matt Gray looking like a bit of a basket case, which is what the really bad League Two teams generally look like. So I think probably in that, 9th to 16th spot, which may not seem particularly exciting, but hopefully within that there can be a lot of excitement to be had.
Yeah, there's more money becoming in TV. Joe, what do you think? Again, you can go specific or quite a wide range, because I know you're still doing it as well.
Yeah, well, I am still penciling my 1s to 24s together, and I have done a first draft of each of the leagues. It's funny that Ali said 9th to 16th, because at the moment, I don't mind saying at the moment I have got Sutton in 16th. And I don't drop off or struggle. I think it's perhaps the division itself will get stronger, and teams can improve the way that they play, and get better just themselves, but actually finish up lower because of the quality of the division. And I think the interesting thing for me is, and I've had it, I've seen it with my own club, Torquay United. Clubs go through cycles. We had sort of one cycle when we nearly got promoted in the season when we had the promotion battle with Sutton, and then obviously the season after. And we've then gone through a new cycle where we've had to reinvent the team. And I wouldn't say Sutton are reinventing their team, but given that they've lost a lot of key players this summer, they're perhaps in that new cycle going forward. So it perhaps may take a little bit longer for this team to show the best version of itself than the one that they've relied on for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So I would say sort of mid-table to lower mid-table at the moment, and given the strength of the division on paper, I think that would be a pretty good.
Yeah, I'd take that with a little run in the Papa John's as well. I'll take it right now. So next question, I'm going to put it to Ali first, because I think he's got a little bit of an advantage where he's been to us a couple of times. But what kind of challenges do you think we face in the next few years? I mean, I don't know, Ali, I hear what you're saying, and I explain it myself of why we don't really sit there going, oh God, we might get relegated. There seems to be just a whole thing of, okay, we're going to struggle, but we'll be okay. But what challenges do you see us facing in the next sort of 2 to 5 years?
Well, I guess, natural challenges of being a team that I am guessing / assuming will, if you remain in League Two, almost always have the lowest or among the lowest budgets in the division. It is incredibly difficult to really, really punch above your weight 100% of the time. And the pyramid is such, as we just mentioned earlier, that if you have a bad season, then you can get relegated, and getting relegated can be very difficult to bounce straight back from. So, I mean, it's probably not a surprise to hear that the most obvious thing that springs to mind would be Matt Gray's departure from Sutton United. You always hope that a manager will never leave, and someone like Matt Gray, you could certainly never see him being sacked. And it's difficult right now to know what opportunities could arise for him elsewhere and how much interest he would have in them. You actually will have a much better idea than I do. I rate him incredibly highly, so much so that if I was in charge of a League Two team at the top end of the budget tables and I had a managerial vacancy, I would want to talk to Matt Gray. So that seems like an obvious one. And then, as Joe has spoken about a lot on this, just player turnover. Again, it is impossible for every club to get their transfers right all of the time. And that's what every club is trying to do, but it doesn't work out like that. So equally, this season, even if the players that signed don't work for whatever reason, seems unlikely, but if they don't, or if half of them are injured, then of course there's a potential issue there. So I hope that the club's being run sensibly and not overextending itself to the point where there would be concerns, about how they would operate financially. I don't see that that's the case from the outside. So, yeah, it's just footballing stuff, really. It's stuff that every team that's doing well would be worried about being on the horizon.
On that, one of the things I used to always find fascinating growing up, where clubs were labelled as run by a bunch of accountants, and I'm supporting Sutton, which is run by a bunch of accountants, and I'm like, that's a good thing, because they're not going to overspend their money. And Matt is a worry every time a vacancy comes up. His name's obviously linked, but it's really weird, and this is where we're more non-league than football league. Is we can't believe that Matt is one of the longest-serving managers at the club, and we yet still all, including himself, feel that he's at the beginning of the story rather than partway through. And he's kind of got a clean slate, and he can do whatever he wants. If he says he wants this, they'll do what they can to get it, and he might not get that at other clubs. Joe, what do you see as the challenges for Sutton?
I think I spoke to you before, this podcast, and I think one of the interesting things, perhaps not this season, but going forward into the next couple of years, is when do Sutton decide we're perfectly comfortable in League Two? When do we now start pushing towards the playoffs? And when does a mid-table or lower mid-table finish actually become a poor season for Sutton? I think that's going to be the key sort of difference, I would say, because you're, as you said, they're really well run. They can sort of meander reasonably and finish mid-table. But how do they then go to that next level? Is it going to require a lot of investment? I would imagine a considerable bit of. And I would say that is sort of their biggest challenge. Because whilst Matt Gray's in charge and the club continues to be run as it is, I would say that they're a comfortable league against relegation, will cause teams problems, and sort of be mid-table. I think the biggest challenge is when they then make that next step. Obviously endorse all that Ali said. The risk that they lose someone like Matt Gray is an apparent one, because he is a very, very good manager.
Yeah, the promotions every 5 years. So from Ryman League to Conference South to Conference National, it's every 5 years. So we've got another 3 years, and then we'll be pushing for promotion. That's the plan. It's not a 5-year plan. It's just how it happened. Right. So we've spoken quite a bit about Sutton. I'm going to wrap up in a sec, but what do you think sort of sets Sutton aside from other clubs? Obviously, the shirt colours is amazing, and everyone loves the amber and chocolate. But what do you think sort of sets Sutton aside? Where Ali, you've been to the ground and seen the fans and sort of experienced it.
Well, I haven't, unfortunately, completed the 92, so I cannot say for sure that I've seen every single ground in the flesh. But I would certainly say with confidence that in EFL terms, in League Two terms, Gander Green Lane absolutely sets Sutton United apart. From the moment that you arrive, it feels fairly different to the other grounds that you'll go to, even at League Two level. From the percentage of attendees that are standing, which is clearly very different to elsewhere. To the community aspect, or rather just the sort of laid back community feel that you feel as you sort of walk around and mill around, it really does feel very different to most of the other grounds that I've been to. So that's obviously a big difference. And then I would just say that recent history, that promotion from the National League as not a fully professional team, the Craig Dundas, aspect of the story, the many things that have, rightfully been sources of pride for Sutton United. All teams or all clubs have unique aspects to them, and I think that's thankfully why we're so lucky to have leagues that we still go all the way down to 4 tiers professional, and it is still the envy of football fans the world over for exactly those reasons.
Well, a couple of comments on that. One of the other things that happens at Sutton, I don't know if you popped into the bar afterwards, is the players tend to come into the bar after games. And when we lost the Papa John's final, went back to the club, and the little intro at the beginning of "Hey, it's the podcast guy" is actually Dundo. When he saw me, he said, "Hey, it's the podcast guy," and I messaged him the next morning going, please send me that as a voice recording. It's going to annoy so many people. And about half an hour later, here it comes on a voice recording. It's like, how many clubs can you do that? They just say, please, it's going to annoy everyone. Joe, what do you think sort of sets Sutton aside? Obviously, those extra points that we got over Torquay sets us aside a little bit, but what else?
It's a funny one, actually, because the answer I would give is that they are so well run. We've seen, as Ali said, we've seen a lot of teams in League Two who have been a bit of a basket case, who I still have my concerns over. And such is, the high turnover of managers and boardroom changes and player changes. The one thing I think would actually set Sutton apart is there is so much continuity. You know what Matt Gray's about. The boardroom level is so secure. The team and the club is run so well. I think that would set them apart. I think it's perhaps difficult for the teams that are really at the top of the league to have that, but because Sutton do have those non-league roots, they do have that community feel about them. That's what I would say sets them apart.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I did say it would be short and sweet, and I'm just dead on time. Appreciate your time, and I'll make sure I quickly plug your content again. It's Joe from the Off the Line blog and Ali Maxwell from the Not the Top 20 podcast.
Let me jump in quickly, if you don't mind. Firstly, thank you very much for having me on, and it's been great to be on with you both. I'm planning on coming to the first game of the season against Notts County.
Excellent.
And it would be great to see you there and maybe have a pint. And I'm at a 50% success rate with the food at Sutton. I had some cheesy chips against Harrogate, which I didn't get a great deal from, apart from stomach issues, and then I had a great cheeseburger the next time I went. So I'm sort of, I think the next time will either be the last time I eat at the ground, or it could be the start of, it could have just been a one-off and it'll be the start of something brilliant. But I'm really looking forward to coming down on opening day, and it'd be great if anyone listening was there to say hi.
Certainly. you've got no way of knowing this, but that very subject has been discussed at length via WhatsApp, various groups, the forum, the food has been discussed at length, and I think there's people who are very fed up of hearing about it, and I'm sure action will be taken, maybe not in time for the Notts County game, but it has been discussed quite a lot. Excellent. So thank you guys for your time. Thanks everyone for listening, and I really do appreciate your ear attention. It is going to work. It is funny, and you will laugh. Don't forget to follow, like, and share at Sutton Podcast on social media. Let us know what you think about it. Subscribe on all your preferred platforms, and leave us a review if you want. Until next time, thank you very much to our sponsors, Lucky Star Gin. Big thank you to today's panel of Joe and Ali, and hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please take care, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
United! 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 United!